Welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast, where we come together to make a difference in the lives of children in foster care and the families who care for them. Foster Friendly communities are part of a nationwide movement by America's Kids Belong that helps people from all walks of life take action and help kids and families thrive. You'll hear from former foster youth, foster and adoptive parents, social workers, faith and business leaders, and other experts on how to engage in meaningful ways. Our hosts Brian, Travis, and Courtney explore inspiring stories of everyday people making a difference in foster care where they live and work.
Hey, and welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Fongsness, joined by my co-host, Courtney Williams. Before we introduce our guest today, which we are super excited to have on, I just wanted to remind you as a listener that that one great way to support the podcast is to leave a 5-star review and share any episodes that you really like with your friends. It's a great way to help just grow the reach of the podcast, and we are grateful for all of you. So thank you for hanging on with us. So our guest today, Tyler Hunter, spent 12 years in kinship care and then spent 4 years in foster care before being adopted at age 16. He's currently a grad student working on his MA in social work with a focus on bringing a clinical dimension to his advocacy. Tyler does behavioral health and child welfare consulting and has volunteered for Kentucky Kids Belong on their I Belong project video shoots. Tyler has an enormous amount of insight and lived experience in the foster care and adoption space. He also has a lot of encouragement for both kids in foster care and foster parents. Welcome to the podcast, Tyler.
Welcome. What's going on, y'all?
So we got
to be here.
Yeah. We love your energy. So, got a little icebreaker for you just to kind of get rolling before we get more into your story. But really curious if you can think of what is either a little known fact about you that's maybe a unique hobby, maybe there's a strange fear, hidden talent, maybe just something not everybody knows about Tyler.
So one thing that often takes people by surprise is that I can cook really well, actually.
Might have to put you to the test.
you know. So oftentimes, when my friends come over, I typically cook, but I'll always try to take a little picture of it, post it on social media, and I'll put the caption, "I hate cooking." But then I'll have so many people slide up and they're like, "But you cook so well."
That's hilarious.
But I secretly like
What's your favorite do you have favorites or a favorite type of thing that you?
Honestly, I like making soups during the winter season, just because nice. I think it just pairs well with the season, and it sets the just tone of comfort and having people over, and when you're a kid and you're watching TV and you see the family around and friends, they're eating crackers and bread and soup.
I love soup.
Me too.
'Tis the season.
I love to cook, so I just don't get it. How you can be a good cook and not love it.
Because it's it's honestly a task, because I'm so busy during the day.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I don't get to I have to, leave the gym, transition to cooking, transition back to, being a student because I'm doing my homework or I'm finishing up work. So it's just that constant transition. I'm just this is a task.
You need a sous chef. I've got a few of them at home, and that makes a world of a difference.
Send one my way. 2 my way, actually.
Okay, I got to pick which 2. Okay, well, Tyler, can tell already this is going to be a fun episode, but starting off with a little bit of a hard situation. In 2018, sadly, you lost your adoptive mom. But that moment in your life kind of became a pivotal moment for you of reflection, and it really just caused you just that deep reflection of yourself and your upbringing. And you said something that we don't often hear people say about foster care. Can you share what that is?
Most definitely. I have, I'm a witness to this. This is my mantra, that foster care saved my life. Entire life. It most definitely did.
Man.
Why do you say that?
Honestly, I know that I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be in the position that I am today or have the insight without that experience in foster care. And at the time, being placed into foster care, I thought this was like the end of me. Like, what is going on? Now I'm going to be one of those kids. And, on like looking back, I'm like, man, no, that put me on a great trajectory. Um, it allowed me to accomplish a lot of my life goals. It allowed me to go to college and, it be paid for. I always knew I was going to college when I was a kid. Didn't know how I was going to get it paid for, but I knew I was going. Different business opportunities and networking opportunities. Actually, my first time, on an airplane traveling outside of the state of Kentucky was, a job, a consulting job for, the state of Baltimore, sorry, the state of Maryland and Baltimore.
Hmm.
So I have just experienced a lot of things that I know for a fact I would not have experienced had it not been for my lived experience in foster care and the things that have happened afterwards.
Yeah. And just going to say a different perspective, we work for a nonprofit and we get people pushback all the time. We hear the naysayers, and I'm a foster mom for many years. And I get people saying to me, like, you're ruining kids' lives and kids should never be. And I agree, like, it's a hard situation, right? It's not like this is a perfect system. It's not a perfect situation, but there's a reason for it, sadly. And it
Sure,
does often change kids' lives. And that's the stuff that people don't often see. So I appreciate
for
you
sure.
being willing to share that, and hopefully more of that as we get into this discussion today.
Definitely, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I was going to say as well. Is just like which you're going to do next, actually. So you've kind of set us up with this mantra that's extremely powerful and paradigm shifting for a lot of people when the norm is sort of foster care wrecked our lives. And for some, that really was their story. And we lament that. But as you talk about more of, so we're going to really unpack that journey then of how it did indeed help save your life. So let's go way back and talk about what your childhood was like and kind of what stood out from those memories as you think back.
For sure, for sure. Well, I was born in the 1900s, you all.
Let's go. Yep.
So immediately after I was born, the state swooped in because my biological mother was a current addict at the time, and obviously was unfit to raise any kids. So my great aunt and uncle, which would be her aunt and uncle, my grandmother's brother and his wife, they were already foster parents, and they became my kinship providers. So, the local CPS was already familiar with them. They were already an approved home. It was family placement, and, we weren't putting the kid in foster care, we were putting them with family. However, that's still under the out of home care umbrella. So, interestingly enough, they were in a religion that was, extremely strict. I wasn't able to, celebrate birthdays and holidays. I remember as a kid having to, leave the room when we had, Valentine's Day party
Mm-hmm.
or, birthday parties. And that was really hard to, explain to kids, as well as, how come you don't live with your mom and dad? How come you don't know your dad? Why don't your parents come to eat lunch with you, for Thanksgiving lunch and those things? So I, began or I learned how to mask. So, as you could tell, have amazing energy. And I learned at a young age how to manipulate, and create an image that was just not real. That way people would not ask those types of questions. So I was the funny kid, you know, Tyler is funny. He's going to say something funny, something crazy. We all love him, so we're going to give him more grace. So when he tries to pivot, when we're asking him
Mm.
those tough questions, we're just going to, it's going to just fly over us. And, looking back, I'm like, man, like, a, 5-year-old, 6-year old, 7-year, 8-year old, they should not have to learn how to, use that tactic as survival at school and survival at home as well. But just, that's the fact that I had to learn that, was now looking back, I'm like, man, that wasn't normal at all. It
Mm.
wasn't normal for me to have to wake myself up,
Mm.
every day, get my, own self dressed and go to school So that looked like, me wearing the same clothes sometimes, or, the clothes didn't really match. However, again, I would try to mask. And whenever people would make comments like, hey, you wore that, the day before yesterday, or, that shirt's not clean, I was, again, just able to mask. But honestly, obviously, that didn't make me feel great whatsoever, because I knew that I was different from my peers. And I, again, it was a learning experience, but also a very traumatic experience for me. And it's not something that I think any child should have to go through. And at the time, I knew that it wasn't normal, but I also accepted that way of normality for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would often create this imaginary world that I would venture into, would disassociate,
Mm-hmm.
especially during those difficult moments. And in my imagination, I had a mom and dad. I lived with my siblings. I had enough food and clothing and all these great things, and life was perfect. So honestly, that saved me during those times, because it helped me like get through those rough times, and it always gave me motivation. Like, hey, I don't know what you're going to do in life. I don't know what you're going to be in life, but you're going to be, grand, because you don't have a limited imagination. Like, your imagination ranges from, east to west, north to south. It's never ending. And that was something that other people also noticed in me, especially the adults at my, elementary school. They would always say, like, you're going to be famous one day. You're going to be on TV. You're going to be special. Like, you have that, like, you got it. All right. Out of all these kids here, look, you the one who got it. And they really looked out for me at school. I would walk into class, and my locker, I would have snacks, for the week. I would walk in and I would have clothes, new shoes and shirts. I would have, when field trips came along, the PTO association, the school administration, along with the, I want to say, like, the guidance counselor and the school interventionist, created a plan that, hey, if there's ever a situation to where he needs, a parent signature, we've already okayed it with guardians that someone here can sign his permission slip so he can go to school. So he can, we used to have agendas back in the day, and every single day your parents had to initial them or sign off on them. That way they knew what was going on. For me, that person was the lunch lady that I went to every single morning. And she would sign off, and she would just make sure, like, hey, you wrote this assignment down. Did you get it done? Hey, I have some snacks. Do you need snacks? So, like, school, and this is why I love school, because school was always, a safe community for me. It was healthy. I was able to, plug in and, receive some of that same energy that I was, trying to give out. And it really helped build me up. And it's literally a huge reason as to why I'm here today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe it makes it just pause, and if there's a teacher listening, to realize the impact they have, what they can do. And we've got a foster placement right now who the school just loves him so well. And I see a brightness in his eyes when a teacher makes a comment, or somebody, the people in the, they all know him. I walk through the hallways with him, and everybody's greeting him. Everybody's making him feel that. And they know his story, and so they understand, but they're doing it in just such a genuine way that makes him just feel special. And it sounds like you had that. And so
definitely. It was the teachers, the guidance counselors, the secretary at the front desk, the lunch ladies, the custodians. They really rallied around me to create this community for me. That every time I walked into that school, I was safe. I was going to be fed. I was going to be nurtured. I had a person or people to go to. My guidance counselor wasn't there. There was a backup person. Like, there was an intervention plan, and they thoroughly executed it. And I'm very appreciative of that now, because now I'm working on my clinical degree and licensure, and treatment plans are a guiding force for us when it comes to treating a person. And I'm like, man, they really rallied together. It was collaborative. It was inclusive, and they didn't know my full story. They knew things were going on at home. Because in my culture, you don't go and tell all your business. That's Black
Mm-hmm.
culture,
Yep.
because if you do, someone can get in trouble at home. And, we need to limit the risk. So you don't disclose anything unless you're asked. And if you are asked and made to, disclose information, you better give just a little bit, okay? Just give just enough, all right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for them to read between the lines and, look at this kid every single day and put the story together, I said a lot without saying a lot. And they were aware of that. So I have a huge appreciation for those individuals who work in the school. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, doesn't matter if you're, again, the lunch lady, the PE teacher, the front desk secretary. Everyone that's involved in a child's life is important.
Yeah.
100%.
For sure. Okay, so Tyler, you spent 12 years in the kinship care, multiple different kinship situations. And then after 12 years, you entered foster care. So not kinship. For those that are listening, kinship are people who you already knew before entering care, usually family, but not always family. So then you enter foster care with the traditional, what we'd call traditional foster care placement. And your first placement was a white family. Tell us about that experience and some of those differences, what that was like.
I was with a white family and I am a chocolate boy, okay? And I'm from, my city is the third largest in Kentucky. And I was going to a really, really, really small county in town and out in the country. Out in the country. Wow. You took me from the hood and put me in the country. And it was another situation like, oh, brother, like, come on. Like, what are we doing here? But really, it was like, I'm somebody's kid. Like, does anyone care about me? Like, did you guys, my family who I was with, who put me into foster care, I'm a kid. Like, do you not love me? Like, you're just going to give me away to some random people? Literally, I come home from school and I'm told to pack up my, my belongings. And I want to paint the picture really quick. I came home from school, was told to pack up my belongings because my biological mom didn't come to court to, take over custodial guardianship of me. And, we're poor. I don't have no backpack that's big enough or duffel bag that can, hold my stuff. So I immediately went into my room and I took a big old handful, like all of my clothes that were hanging up, anything out the dressers, and I put it on the bed and I took that comforter and I, everything was wrapped up in that. And I drug it through the apartment, through the sidewalk, and just stuffed it in the back of the car. And, that was my life. That was all that I had. And it was nothing, so I felt so reduced in that moment. Not only do I have nothing, it's kind of being, reaffirmed that I am nothing. You guys are just giving me away to random people. And, there's a persona or there's a perspective about foster care in general, that these kids look a certain type of way. Their families are, are they have these different attributes. They're forgotten about, they're abandoned. And some of those things, most of those things are true, but at different times they're accurate. But I felt all those things in, one moment. And again, just masking everything, to me, I handled it like a champ. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't refuse. I was like, okay, because what I knew was survival mode. Stay ready so you don't ever have to get ready. And I was ready for anything, whenever, wherever, however. And, I remember meeting my family. And it wasn't like a, meet and greet, what do you like to eat on Saturdays? It was, hey, Tyler, this is your foster parents, here are their names, and they're going to take you. That's scary. I don't know where I'm going. I didn't even know where they lived at the time. No one told me anything, how long I was going to be here. So I'm asking, I remember asking my foster dad at the time, like, hey, like, where do you guys live at? And he told me, and I was like, do you know how long I'm going to be here? And no, they didn't know. And it's the God's honest truth. They didn't know. No one knows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how kids get, in this cycle, and families get in this cycle of, oh, we're just going here temporarily. Now you're aging out of it. Oh, you're being adopted from it. So I have to be honest, going with this white family, I also have preconceived notions like, oh, they're going to buy me everything. Like they got money,
Yeah.
they're rich, because again, I come from the hood. I ride
Mm-hmm.
my bicycle to the grocery store and, come back. I have 12 bags on my handlebars, because I'm grocery
Mm-hmm.
shopping, So for me, I was like, okay, wow, like they're going to be rich, whatever. And then I'm like, hold on, we're going, there's the country. There's land out here. Like, what's up? What are we doing? And I'm like, do you guys have any other kids? Am I the only kid? And I was at the time. And when I put up to the house, I was like, wow, this is an amazing house. It was a farmhouse and it sat on
Mm-hmm.
11 acres. And I'm like, man, I ain't never seen nothing like this. We can't live in an apartment, shoot, like, okay, this is the Taj Mahal right here. And I I remember being very scared, but also comfortable. Because here was my family, my black family that gave me away, and here it was these random, this random white family that took me in. And, whether they cared about me to the extent, beyond the paycheck, that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything that I was really concerned with at the time. It was, they seemed safe. They seem safe, period. They seem safe. They have to be safe. They're foster parents, right? Most cases, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to really, I won't say hate it at first, but I remember going to bed that first night and there was just this relief, like, oh my gosh, like I'm safe for now.
Mm.
I'm
For
safe,
now.
but there's this anxiety that I don't know what's going to happen, so I got to kind of, remain, aware of, because anything could happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot in that placement. I learned, different cultural aspects and, that, not all white people are racist and, that, hey,
Yeah.
you can actually learn some things on the farm. I learned how to use a post digger, right? And pound it in the
Uh-huh.
dirt and the pole goes down there. I learned how to, use a drill gun and like put up drywall and paint and all that great stuff.
Hmm.
And, it was a great learning experience for me, a great environment, but there were still a lot of things missing that I needed and that I was not receiving because
Hmm.
I still didn't get that nurturing aspect, right? It wasn't how was your day, how are your grades, how is school, do you have any homework, are you feeling okay, do you miss your family, how's your mental health, none of those things whatsoever. And I began to see that, they were they were they were just checking the box. I'm not going to say doing the bare minimum. They were just checking the box. They were. It was a job for them, and they would often mention it. When we went out to eat, it was hey, we only get things off the value menu, and we get waters. When we go out to eat, just because things are so expensive and it's just one of you. We don't have a lot of foster kids. We've asked them to give us more. So I'm like, hold on, like, I mean, I know this is a job, but this is a job for you. Like, okay,
Hmm.
okay, I'm a human being. I'm not a 9 to 5, but okay, whatever. Um, so again, feeling reduced again, and I part of me knew that this was something that wasn't normal, but a part of me also was accepting of this. And
Hmm.
that's what prevented me from saying anything whatsoever or from hyper analyzing the situation. It's just the way things went.
Hmm.
So I feel like just as I was getting comfortable there, getting comfortable at school, and just like in elementary school, high school did the same thing. We mask. Don't ask me any questions about anything. I'm avoiding those conversations when it comes to families and mom and dad. And by this time, freshman year in high school, I was Allen Iverson with the pivots, and I could, you know, so people knew me, but they didn't know me. They didn't know anything, behind the curtain. And that's something that kind of followed me throughout my my life until I started advocacy But there's this reoccurring, theme that, I have to stay ready because anything could, happen at the drop of a dime. So I remember coming back home, just as I was getting, comfortable and being told that I was going to, be moving again, new foster home, just like that.
So how long were you at this first placement?
Oh man, I was there from May to, I would say, less than a year.
Okay. Less than a year. Okay.
So all of my placements outside of my initial Victor Kim placement were less than a year. So this was now the fourth place that I was at less than a year.
Jeez. Wow. Okay. So what I love about so far in this conversation, and kind of as you've shared as you take us into your story, you do such a great job of painting the picture of like as I'm listening of, obviously I'm not you or in your shoes, but what that in a distant way would feel like to be, culture shocked out of your, place of your city into the country, into a white family. I mean, the feelings you shared about like abandonment, maybe even from your own family, and betrayal in maybe a way, to now here you are, this white family who's taking care of you. You feel safe, but it feels like it's super foreign, and beyond maybe feeling safe, you're not really feeling much attunement and connection. And so that kind of seems to be where placement one landed at. So as we continue on, your second foster care placement would become your last placement, and you're going to get into why that is and all that stuff. But how was that different then in just various ways?
For sure. The day that I came to my mom, I knew that it was going to be something special, and as I mentioned earlier, as a kid, I always knew that I was going to do great things. Great things were going to happen to me. Didn't know when, didn't know how, didn't know in what shape or form. And at the time, I didn't know this was going to be a forever home. I thought it was just going to be another placement before I went back to my family. So the day I came to my mom, at first I was like, okay, I'm back in Bowling Green, which is my city. I'm going to a different, school district. But can this lady really handle me? My mom at the time was 61 years old, which is not old whatsoever. Now looking back, it's not old, but as a 14-year-old, you're like, okay, this is pretty old, and I was just like, I don't know if she can handle me. Like, I don't know. And I wasn't like crazy. But from the day that the moment I stepped foot in our little duplex, 2-bedroom duplex, it was warm. I can see the couch in the love seat. I can see the wood paneling. It was brown, and it was a little outdated, but it kind of matched my mom's aesthetic. She was an older woman, but a cozy woman. So there wasn't anything fancy in there whatsoever. It was very just welcoming and warm and inviting. And like I said, I didn't know at the time this was going to be my forever home. But I didn't know how long I was going to be here, but I knew that it was another safe place. I was with a Black person and a Black family. And she seemed to genuinely care about me, because what she did do that I did experience in my other placements was try to get to know me. What do you like to do? What do you like to eat? What type of friends do you like to be around? Do you like to play sports and all these other great things? And I'm just like, I really didn't know how to answer them. I was a little uncomfortable just because no one had ever asked me outside of, school, but no one had ever asked me these things. So I'm saying just enough, just to kind of, check the box and like have that conversation, but I'm not being too open because I can't be vulnerable because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to, piss you off and you're going to, kick me out, and don't know. Mm-hmm. So I have to protect myself, which means that I have to limit, my vulnerability or openness to you. So, she tried her hardest, and she succeeded into connecting me into things that I like to do. And it was the first time that I felt normal, in my life. like I was normal like the other kids, I got to do things. I had a cell phone, and I got to have friends, and although people try to ask me those questions like about my parents, I didn't get them as much because he's with a black person, so this has to be someone he's related to,
Yeah.
mom, grandma, auntie.
Yeah.
Like, come on, so we're not gonna ask. Like that, it's who
Right.
like at this point, who doesn't live with their grandparents, or aunt or uncle? Like this is high school now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know shit happens at home now. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
it was the first time again. I just felt normal. My mom was the oldest of 11 kids, so everyone's married. Everyone has kids, and this was something that was kind of foreign to me because I come from a big family, but not a family that was so connected like this. I mean, they did everything together. They went to church together. They went on. My uncle was one of the basketball coaches at the high school that I went to. They all showed up to support him at the games, and we I don't know, just random fish fries down at my granddad's house. And, oh, we're going down to granddaddy's house. What's the occasion? Oh, he just wants some fish. So we're all going down there and having a fish fry, in this little trailer. And like outside was a big yard. And, we're all out there, with our tables and chairs, a big old picnic. And, there's a pot. We got some grease in it, frying the chicken and frying the fish. Like, a nice little time. And I'm just like, these people are weird. I have like, what black people do this? Like, this is possible in my black culture. I'm actually experiencing this, and it took me a long time to get comfortable with that because it was just so foreign for me. So with that came like a lot of resistance, and there were some people who experienced me in that season who they didn't get to experience, a healthy version of me. That was a kid who was resistant to kind of some of the redirection or prompting that you gave him. And it rubbed people the wrong way, So I often found myself, getting into verbal altercations with some of my family members. Um, but that was something that I think is kind of normal. Just teenagers, we're going through puberty and whatnot. But for me, it was just heightened because I'm the outsider here, right? Um, so yeah, so there came to a point in time to where I was informed that hey, you won't be going back home with your parents or with your family. We had tried reunification with your biological mom. She wasn't showing up to appointments and wasn't answering phone calls. We tried to get you reunified with a relative. That didn't happen. Your uncle, that didn't happen. So at this point, we're looking at adoption. My heart sunk because
Yeah.
this was just, and I was told this during a weekly check-in with my case manager. Girl, you're supposed to just come and ask me how are things going. I'm your easy case, okay? How's school? You good? You got food? I know your mom was feeding you because I just talked to her. I know you're good. So for you to give me this news, in the middle of the day, outside in the parking lot of my school, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, am I ever gonna like why me? Like, am I ever gonna just be safe? Am I ever gonna be
Hmm.
able to, not just have to worry? Is that part of my brain ever gonna be turned off? Will it? So I'm like, damn, they didn't ask me or anything. And I'm just like, do you guys know who? Like what family? Like what's going on? What are we doing? And of course they didn't. And now I understand because I understand like how that works. Not saying that that's the most appropriate thing to do, but I remember just being devastated, and I remember just going home after that. And one thing that my mom did, she always made sure that when I got home from school, there was a meal cooked. Wasn't always the best meal. Sometimes I'm like, I just walked out. I just got off the bus. Why are we eating already? Like,
Yeah. Huh.
um, and we would eat together. So, I remember, she could tell that something was like going on with me. Like something had like shook me up because I was real quiet. I mean, I couldn't even hold my head up to talk. And she asked me, is everything okay? And, 15-year-old me, everything's fine. I'm good. What do you mean? And then she said, are you sure? And I'm like, well, actually, I met with my case manager and my case manager told me that I was going to be put up for adoption, and she was like, wow, like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, she says that I've been in foster care too long and this is the next step. So there was probably a dead period about 10 to 15 seconds, when I was, by this time, like, my plate in my hand is shaking, my fork is shaking, and the words came out of my mouth, will you adopt me? And, I think she was like in mid bite almost, and she just stopped. And she was like, you want me to adopt you? Of course I'll adopt you. Like, yeah,
Wow.
I'll talk to your case manager tomorrow and let her know. And, I was just like internally like, oh, thank you, Lord Jesus, hallelujah. Woo! Dodge the bullet there. No. But but the fact that this had, like, like, and at the time I didn't notice, like, this is something that she had wanted. She was 61 years old. Imagine being 61 years old and having the opportunity to have kids, being robbed from you because of a health diagnosis. Imagine being
Yeah.
the oldest of 11 kids and, being the caretaker for all these nieces and nephews, when their parents are at work or on vacation when they need you because you don't have kids.
Hmm.
So imagine seeing that, but never being able to experience that. So, it was an opportunity for me to, have a mom, but also an opportunity for her to have a son. So
Yeah.
that process, that transition for me, it wasn't really, anything difficult as far as the adoption transition, because from the day I stepped in through the front door, I was treated as if I had been there my whole entire life. You
Yeah.
know, I was, hey, that's my auntie, this is my uncle, it's my cousins, this is my granddaddy. They didn't say, oh, this is our foster, a nephew. None of that. This is family. He is family.
Wow. I
So
love
that
that.
transition for me, it wasn't anything, super hard whatsoever. But the hard part for me was, again, learning how to be vulnerable and learning how to let people love on me, learning how to
Mm.
be comfortable with people wanting to celebrate me, because it was something that I had just not been ever really exposed to, something that I didn't think that I was capable of receiving. So
Mm.
when the time, those moments when I was receiving it, I was very resistant. I wanted to do anything and everything to make you not love me. I wanted to be the most unappealing thing, kid, to where you're like, pack up that bag and y'all come pick them up, come get them, come get them,
Hmm.
because that's the part of my brain that was activated, and it was very dominant, and it drove my behaviors and thoughts. And even when I didn't, when I wanted to be, vulnerable, I couldn't. When I wanted to say
Hmm.
I love you, I couldn't. I don't know what
Mm.
that force was. I just couldn't do it. It was so uncomfortable for me, and it wasn't. I I will say it wasn't until when I was about 19 years old when I really got into my forgiveness era, because well, I realized that, hey, like, in order to accept these new things over here that this foster care experience has given you, you got to let go of these old things, right? So
Right.
old keys don't unlock new doors, right? Right. And I think that's why we get the foster care was so damaging for me, because I, a lot of people, families, they have trouble, accepting the change, accepting the gift.
Right.
It's truly a gift. And when you don't accept it, you meet it with resistance. And then you start fragmenting the relationships and networks and, self-sabotaging yourself. So at age
Mm.
19, I realized, man, there's a person to where, this anger, this feeling of abandonment is really centralized on, and I have to learn how to forgive them, and I have to actually do it. It can't be a thought anymore. And that person was my biological mom. And I remember,
Mm.
I was in my own apartment at the time. Actually, I was 18, not 19. And I had just called her randomly, and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I forgive you, you know and I was like broken down in tears, because here I was having to forgive a person who I didn't know if they were sorry, a person who hasn't apologized to me for what the things that they've done to me, abandoning me, not showing up for me, a person who I don't know if they're gonna, even accept or appreciate the fact that I'm forgiving them. But I've learned that forgiveness is for yourself. It's not for the other person. And forgiveness is the starting point to help you heal and move on to again, accept these gifts. So from there, I was able to fully or try to fully accept my family, my adopted family, and my mom, and try to embrace her a little more. And I was, starting to be more intentional. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, every single day, I love you, hey, give me a hug, none of that. But it looked like me talking to her every single day. Me
Mm-hmm.
going, talking about a house every single day, me initiating conversations with her and not waiting for her to initiate conversations, and just me being more open about things that were going on with my life at the time. I was dating this girl at the time and just being truthful to like allow my mom to, pour into me and give me advice. She has wisdom from her experience. Let her pour into me and help guide me. Like I'm a very strong-minded and independent person, but that's what a mother's job is to do, and it's to lead her son and guide her
Mm-hmm.
son. And I was able to, start letting her do those things. And again, it was a little abnormal for me, and it took time for me to, just get more comfortable with that. And it wasn't until she passed, the day she passed away, that I was like, man, I've wasted so many like days, moments of being too afraid, honestly, being afraid for me to be vulnerable with her, for her to really see me. And she saw me, and there were times where she pressed and pressed, and I was so resistant that she stopped. But I'm like, man, I wish that I could have just let her in. Because now, at 21, when she passed away, this is when I feel like I needed her the most. Because now I'm like I'm this young, trying to be a young adult, navigating the world of, just the world of the world. How do I do my taxes? How do I call this doctor to make an appointment? Like, hey, they said I got to write a check. Do you remember how to write a check? So those things, as well as, those emotional things, like, man, I got put out of school because of, my academics, and my mom's not here. Like, I can't talk to her about it. And, she can't love on me and ask me what's going on. I don't have a place to go to just sit on the couch until I go to work, or just because I'm off work, sit on the couch and her couch and watch Netflix, and things that we used
Mm-hmm.
to do. And I can remember, well, honestly, I can count on one hand how many times I have initiated, saying I love you to my mom in our duration of, 8 years together, of almost 8 years together. And that's something that sticks with me. And it's something that I try to encourage, young people and even adopted and foster families, that you truly like an authentic relationship with your kids is extremely healthy and needed, because again it's a driving force to us kids who have been placed in foster care, to either, for lack of words, go right or go left.
Yeah.
you know so that's, that experience also of her death, it also propelled me into being more intentional with the things that I do when it comes to advocacy. Being more intentional with showing up to meetings and being a leader and coming with ideas and changes for, policy and regulations. And when I'm in speaking engagements, speaking to the foster parents and the staff to uplift them, not demonize them whatsoever. We know there's a lot of things that's going wrong in this system, called child foster care, right, or out of home care system. But there's also a lot of things that are going extremely well, and it's not fair for us to not highlight those things, because here I was, a kid who was always, told the things I was doing wrong. You have a smart mouth, you're too grown, or, all these negative things. And I didn't hear a lot from my family. You're amazing, you're bright, you are intelligent, you are going somewhere, you're going to be somebody one day. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't hear those things. And I think it's just as important for parents and families to hear those things as it is for kids to hear those things. Because if they don't hear these things, then they can't tell their kids, right? So it
Right.
again, it just kind of reinstates that multi-generational like process or system of like trauma. That's how we break trauma. That's how we break generational curses. That's how we break, maladaptive behaviors. We have to try new healthier, methods And part of it is thinking differently and speaking differently to ourselves and to each other.
Yeah. So that is part of what you do now. I mean, you consult child welfare, right?
For
What's
sure.
your primary message to the child welfare workers when you are consulting them?
The job is shitty at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Mm.
It is overwhelming. It doesn't always pay the best. Oftentimes you sacrifice your own family time or just your own personal time for this job. And when you're often met with resistance from families and kids. But I promise you, everything that you do, um, all the good things, especially, we notice it. And just because we choose not to acknowledge it, doesn't mean that we don't benefit from it. It doesn't mean that we're not
Mm.
grateful for it.
Mm.
And if you don't believe that, I'm a witness. I'm a living testimony that your work, your hard work, your sacrifice, honestly, that's what it is. Your sacrifice was not done in vain. You know,
Mm.
if out of 100 kids, you have 3 or 4 or 5, that, decide to come back to this field or not even come to work in this field, but just say, my social worker, my foster family, my adopted family, they did their damn best on me. And like, I survived because of them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that's success to me. It's
Mm.
success to me. So don't stop whatsoever. Keep going because, like sometimes the social worker, that caseworker is the only person who that kid looks forward to seeing, every week. Is the
Mm.
only person that kid gets, positive affirmations from, reassurance from, or just a person who will listen to them. Sometimes that's the only time that they get that. Sometimes it's only the foster family that they get it from. They don't get it from school. They don't get it from their
Yeah.
friends. They don't get it from their family. Sometimes it's only the school. I believe that child welfare is everyone's business, and that we all are responsible for the well being of our children. So any interaction that you have with a child, whether they're your child or not, should be intentional, should be meaningful, should be healthy, should be positive.
Well said.
Yeah.
Said.
That was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good. It was
It was
very,
good.
very good and insightful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tyler, thanks for joining us. You've had just a lot of insight. And again, I echo what Travis said. Just as a foster mom, I often think, we're the on-call family. So we get kids in the middle of the night or they'll come drop of a hat. And I'm always like, what are these kids thinking right now? What are they feeling? And it just makes me have true compassion and empathy for them. But you help kind of put behind the scenes those
Mm.
thoughts and those feelings and some things that we
Mm.
need to be thinking about as foster families and adoptive families and teachers and caseworkers and all the people. That whenever we close out our episodes, we always ask our guests to finish the sentence. I want you to finish the sentence. What kids in foster care really need is.
The kids in foster care really need is a community who pours back into them unconditionally. And that community that community is often made up of their foster family or adopted family, those child welfare professionals, their school. Any and everybody can be a part of the community, and it's important to nourish that community. So that when they leave your home, or if they stay in your home, that they know they have a great idea of what community is and a great sense of community, and realize, hey, it has been the community that has helped me to thrive, and now I need to go and be a part of someone else's community, um, to help them thrive. I
Yeah.
need to go now and be that adult that I needed whenever I was a kid.
Wow. That sums it up as well as you could. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is about, finding your belonging in
Mm-hmm.
community and being that community to do that. Yeah, I love that message.
For sure. I think foster families, Courtney, and I know Travis, you're adopted family as well. You all are you're a different type of special, because it takes a lot to take in kids who are not your own, first of all, kids who sometimes you know little about, and to bring them into your home. You don't know where these kids come from. You don't know what they're capable of doing. So you are vulnerable yourselves Now, I don't think we do a great job of highlighting the vulnerability that our foster parents and our adoptive families, have to have, because you can't
Yeah.
accept someone in your home who you don't know. Like, are we just gonna let strangers in our homes?
Yeah.
We don't do that. But for kids, the fact that you can do that for a kid and not know what they're capable of, it's a different type of special. And I think that, again, you all just don't get the credit that you deserve, but also there's an emphasis on the kid. But it takes a lot to support a kid who has a complex trauma, who already has, a mom and dad or a family, and, you want to love on them, and they're being resistance. You're telling them, man, you're going to walk right into the fire. I don't want you to burn. You're trying to protect them. And, it's very hard to see them, when they do walk in that fire, so it's man, like the
Yeah.
compassion and just the energy that it takes is something that I don't myself don't even have right now. And it's something that I didn't realize what that was needed for a very long time. So, I mean, you all
Hmm.
are a huge part of this system, a critical part of it. Without you all, we don't have a system whatsoever, because who's going to take care of these
Hmm.
kids?
Yeah.
No one,
Yeah.
right?
And it's a need. It's a growing need.
Yeah.
I feel like we have fewer and fewer homes across the nation, and more and more needs. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. So I'm sure you all, the kids who come in your home, Travis, I know your boys are, just
I
no,
don't know.
no.
No, they keep us on our toes, but no, you're right. And I really appreciate you saying that in an honoring way of, even just the vulnerability that it really does take, but that normal people just stepping up into the space. It's not here. I mean, there's a heroic work in a sense, but it really is normal people with big hearts just saying, we love you. We're going to be here for you, for whatever, to help you heal, not knowing where you're going next. But yeah, and both Courtney and I can personally say of just whether it's fostering or adopting and the beauty, the struggle, but just it would never ever change what we've done.
For
And
sure,
you continue to do,
for
Courtney.
sure,
Courtney continues to do that with her husband. So
for
fostering.
sure,
So
for sure. And I would honestly go above and say that it's beyond, normalcy. A normal person would say, "Oh, that's a bad situation. I don't know how to help," or, I'm just going to say, prayers, prayers, prayers. It takes an above average, above normal person or family to say, you know what, I'm going to do something about this as well. I'm going to get involved. And that's something that you all have done. And that's why I say that you guys are special people, because
yeah.
it's a sacrifice, to already have a full plate that's hard to balance, to say, you know what, no, like that person or this kid, this sibling group, they need me.
Yeah.
And that's something that from one foster kid to a foster adopted family, y'all, that's a huge sacrifice, and I'm so thankful for that. And I know that I'm not, I was never placed in you all's home, but I'm going to say thank you on behalf of those kids who have been placed in your home. I'm
Yeah.
saying thank you for all of them, okay?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Tyler. And thanks for this conversation. Again, just your experience, your vulnerability, your voice, it is much needed to be heard. So thank you. And just curious, how can people follow you? How can they find you if they want to know more about Tyler Hunter and see pictures of your great cooking, maybe?
For sure, for sure, for sure. I am on social media. I'm on Facebook, Tyler Hunter hyphen boards, Boards. On Instagram, I am Mr. Kentucky.
Mr. Kentucky.
Self-proclaimed.
Hey, hey, not even self-proclaimed. I think it's Mr. Kentucky 15. It's either 15 or 13, one of
No.
those two. And then you can always reach out to me, DM me. I will hit you back. My email address, lamonthunter30@gmail.com. I love talking about these things. I love, getting involved with different agencies and other partners who, help to support this system of care. So reach out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope
Yeah.
people do. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
well, thanks
Very
for this inspiring conversation. Really amazing your story and your journey, the energy and light that your life shows and casts into places that have shadows. And yeah, thanks for being on with us today.
For sure. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be on this platform. And, thank you for allowing those with experience to be on this platform. This is a great way to amplify, our voice and the need and the great works that are happening. So thank you all so much for that.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, will you help us reach more people by subscribing, sharing the podcast with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review? If you've been inspired by what you've heard today and want to learn more of how you can make a difference for kids in foster care and the foster families where you live, visit americaskidsbelong.org. We depend on individual donors to fund our work. We'd be grateful if you would consider joining us as a monthly donor. Visit americaskidsbelong.org to make your tax-deductible donation. Thank you. Together, we can ensure a family for every child in foster care and a foster-friendly community to ensure every foster family feels loved and supported.